Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Claire Markwick, and this is Real Life Business. Hello and welcome to episode number 11 of Real Life Business. This week, I am chatting with Emma Moss, who at just 21 years old is the owner of Lucid Kombi Cafe and Lucid Coffee Bar. We talk about what it's like to be heading up a team and running two businesses while your mates are out partying, and how to make sure your business doesn't take over your life. Em has been a client of mine for about 18 months now, and I'm often blown away by her proactive, no-nonsense approach to life and business, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. I remember our very first conversation on the back of me responding to her putting out a request for a business coach. And I was thinking, wow, imagine if everyone operated this way, proactively thinking ahead and so focused on being the best that she can be. It's very, very cool. Now, before we get into this week's episode, if this conversation sparks your curiosity for what working with a coach could look like for you, why not book in for one of my complimentary business bouncing calls? They're a great way to find some focus or find some energy, renew that passion for what you're doing, or just chat through where your business is heading and where you want to take it next. You can book a call via my website at reignitepc.com.au and click on the book a chat button, or you can find the link to the booking in the show notes for this episode. Alrighty, so let's get into it with Em sharing about the start of her business journey. So you are someone who started their business journey incredibly young. You were just 18 when you started your first business. Is that an indication, did you always know that you wanted to be in business?
Absolutely not. I did not know that I wanted to always do business. When I started year 11, I decided that I wanted to be really academic. I have never been academic in my life. I got D's and C's all through primary and early high school. So I just started studying a lot. I became obsessed with success, I guess, and getting straight A's, and then fell in love with law and decided that I wanted to be a lawyer. So I enrolled for an undergrad degree at University of Melbourne and pulled out last minute just as I was about to sit my HSC exam, because I realized that that's actually not what I wanted to do at all, and it was not aligned with any of my values. It was aligned with other people's values. So yeah, that's how my business started to come into fruition.
Wow, that was massive. How did that decision go down in the family?
Everyone took it on pretty well. It was a little bit hard to process going from wanting to study law and be a lawyer to wanting to be an entrepreneur / hippie out of serving coffee out of a Kombi van. But it was definitely well received for the most part. I think my family is really hands-on and really entrepreneurial. So it didn't come as a super big shock, but I think everyone was sort of hoping that I'd be the super academic person in the family, and didn't quite get there. Yeah.
The one to break the mold and go off and do the
totally
traditional study,
get
a degree, get a job.
At least someone's going to do it, but no, I didn't end up doing it. And no, my parents just took it in their stride and cool, all right, you're going to do this. I have no doubts. You're extremely stubborn and I'm sure it's going to happen. So let's do it, I guess.
This is what I keep saying to my husband, our eldest son. He is we've spoken about him many times. He is so stubborn, and as Terry says, much like his mother. And whilst that can be a real challenge to parent, I am hoping that when he's 18, he will have that same, what, everyone might think I'm crazy, but I know I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it. I think that's...
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a perk to being stubborn, because you're not going to be someone that's following the flock. You're always going to be at the front being you know what? I can do my own stuff. I can start a business at 18 if I want to. Who cares? Yeah, no.
So
it's fun.
was that you know, walk in your own path, fight in your own fight, go in your own way? Is that something that you've always had in you, do you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, like if it was not athletics or cross country or studying, like I've always been someone that's taken my roles very seriously and found purpose in everything that I do, regardless.
Mm.
Yeah, I think like the first sort of year after leaving high school and starting Lucid is probably one of the most like unpredictable and scary moments of my life, because you've just left school, you have no effing idea how to be an adult, and then decided to, you know, enroll into a business degree. Sorry, forgot to mention that. um, and have two part-time jobs and running your own business. So it was a lot, but I don't know, it's just passion, and you look back on it and you're like, how the hell did I do that? But you just do anything to make it work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So how did it start then? You bought the Kombi,
Mm-hmm.
you decked it out, you did it up,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you
So
went.
yeah, it pretty much went like that. So I graduated school, all through out studying my HSC and completing my HSC. My dad and I were fixing up the Kombi. I was designing logos and doing Instagram whilst also studying 8 hours a day for my HSC exams. Madness. And then yeah, I was working at a cafe in Tumbarumba called Nest, and saving up all my cash. And yeah, sort of by March 20, 2019 or 18, I think it's 2018, I did my first market, and I would just write lists and lists of events and ring up like 10 or 12 people a day and hope that one person would say yes to having me at their event. And that's sort of how I gained traction, and just social media and my friends and my family supporting me. And yeah, I got there in the end.
That's so awesome. Like we've known each other a while now, and I've always described you as someone who is so ahead of your time, you know, so both, you know, in maturity, in your attitude to things, and you're so proactive. Even what you said there, in as much as you're on the phone all the time going, let me come to your event, let me come to your event, let me come to your event, you're the one on the front foot making it happen. That's really cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's been bred into me. If you want to make something happen, no one else is going to do it for you. And yeah, I think I just, like, when I turned 18 and Lucid came into my mind and I was planning everything, I just had this beautiful vision of myself driving the Kombi to an event and just being so in my power and aligned with everything that I believed in the world, and putting out beautiful service and connecting with community. Yeah, it's a moment that I can still remember and still recall dreaming about, and now I do it on a daily basis. So it's well worth the hustle.
So cool. And you touched on it there, like some of the values, some of what makes lucid. That's something that's really important to you, isn't it? Making that feel, that experience.
Absolutely.
Customers.
Yeah. My priority, and as well as my team now at Lucid, is building connection with community and bringing those people out of the woodworks that might not usually get out, the alternatives and the hippies and the outcasts, into a community where they feel included and feel loved. Yeah, I would do it even if I wasn't paying myself to do it. It's something that's so important to me, especially in rural areas where, you know, those sort of communities are a little bit more isolated as well. Yeah.
You mentioned, obviously I know your story quite well, but those listening maybe don't, so fill us in. You mentioned just then, and your team. So how do you go from teenage you in a Kombi to a team? What was that process?
Yep, totally. I hustled my, am I not allowed to swear in this segment? I hustled my bum
you can. I've marked it explicit because the odd word slips out of my mouth.
Yeah, so good. I hustled for 2 years. I had 2 part-time jobs. I was working at Sombreros, And I was working as a bartender behind a bar. So I would basically wake up at 5 a.m., be out in the Kombi by 6, finish by 9, into sombreros, and then finish at the bar maybe 10 p.m. So I was working huge days, and I did that for almost 2 years. COVID happened, and just coincidentally, my dream shop came up for sale. And yeah, I just went for it. I thought, you know what, whilst everyone's shutting down, I'm going to hustle behind the scenes and start up my own coffee shop alongside my beautiful Kombi. And that's sort of where it started. I always wanted to have a bricks and mortar, but obviously being 18, I couldn't afford to start that. But like, in saying that, mobile and introducing a business in that way is so beautiful, because you're so embedded in the community. Like, you're on the ground, you're in the markets, you're at every festival, every charity event, you're there and connecting with the community around you. So I think it was honestly a match made in heaven for a young entrepreneur to connect to their customers and their community like that. Yeah.
And build your confidence, build your identity, help you create that vision of what Lucid was going to become. Like, you do that while you're on the ground doing it, as opposed to sitting behind a computer imagining what it might be like.
Absolutely. And I'm definitely an entrepreneur that works off intuition. So it was just not something that it's not something that you can sit behind a computer and dream about. Like, I needed to be on the ground. And that's, that's how I came up with my mission. I just sort of grew and learnt, and it's a lot of fun. And it's not all easy though at all.
No, I can imagine. I'm just trying to think back to, so how old are you now?
I'm 21, turning 22 this year. Yeah.
21, 22. I am trying to put myself back 18 years. Jesus Christ, now I feel old. to my when I was 21, and like all I can remember is the fact that I was at uni, I was drinking a lot, I was partying heaps, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Like, our worlds couldn't have been any more different. Is there a small part of you that's like, I wonder what would have happened if I'd have gone that uni route and done that?
Yeah, I do think of it, because all my friends are still in uni, or just about to graduate or doing their honors or something like that. And honestly, sometimes when I'm freezing my ass off at 5 a.m. in winter and I'm serving coffee out of the van or prepping the shop or whatever, I do sort of sometimes dream of what that would look like for me. But I just couldn't. I needed something that was going to align with my values now. I'm impatient as hell. It was just sort of, I've always listened to my gut and listened to my intuition, regardless of how crazy it's made me feel and how, I guess, isolated it's made me feel from other people my age. That's probably like, starting a business when you're 18 and running a business during your 20s. It can feel super isolating. Like, if all your friends are going out on a Saturday night, you've got to open your coffee shop Sunday morning, you can't go out.
And that's something that I hear a lot anyway from anyone who says, being in business is lonely, even if you're in the hospitality industry or the retail industry or a service industry, where we might be talking to people all day. We're talking at such a surface level, aren't we? We're not talking about how we're feeling. We're not talking about our worries. We're not talking about our dreams. And as I say, that can be hard in our 30s, 40s, 50s, yet alone in our 20s, when most of those around us are just in a completely different life stage. Like you say, your friends, your peers, completely different life stage, just wouldn't get some of the things that you have to manage in yourself.
Totally. And I think, like, my my method to getting around that is, you know, still finding those commonalities with your friends other than work. Like, for example, all my friends are really forward thinking and care for the environment, or, you know, they enjoy eating plant-based, or they like hiking and being outside, or they have dogs like I do, and that sort of stuff. So still, like, I guess dropping that character or that business mode and just being like, I can still be in my 20s too. And I think that's been my biggest, like, emotional mental hurdle, is accepting that I'm not a 40-year-old woman as much as I feel like it on the inside, and I'm allowed to make mistakes, and I'm allowed to go out every now and then when I want to. And I'm like, finally, like, this is what almost my 4th year of business, I'm giving myself permission to do all the fun things that I guess I missed out on in the first 4 years. Yeah.
I think that's so important, isn't it? What is it? It's to recognize our humanity, isn't it? To recognize that we're human, and whatever life stage we're at, whether we're 40, whether we're 50, whether we're 60, like, mistakes are part of growing, aren't they? And if we're not making mistakes, then we're probably not pushing ourselves enough anyway.
Absolutely. And you've got to have relationships and friendships outside of work as well. And I think it's easy not to, honestly. And I think for someone like me, I'm very type A personality. I just like to keep going. But it does catch up on you. And as we've talked about before in our coaching sessions, that just leads to burnout. And then you're stuck on your floor crying at 2 a.m. doing crazy shit. So I learned hard and fast when it came to accepting my humanity, and the fact that I need to give myself permission to feel feelings and be someone in their 20s as well.
Yeah, I think that's such an important learning, isn't it? It's so important that when we are someone who is so driven and so determined and so like adamant we're going to succeed, like so pig-headed and stubborn, like that's awesome, but it can also be our demise, can't it? Because we can push ourselves to absolute breaking point.
Totally. And I think honestly, I've learned so much this year. Definitely opening the shop has forced me to look at myself on a whole nother level of being an entrepreneur. But, you know, I find that every day I actually just mentally check in with myself and say, you know, how are you? How are you actually feeling?
Yeah.
Past all the bullshit, how are you feeling? And, you know, are you doing your 60-hour week because you're driven and you want to do it, or are you doing it because you don't want to feel your feelings and you don't want to, you know, face some things that you don't want to? Like, I'm not using work as a coping mechanism anymore, which is huge. Like, it's and definitely if it's a generational thing, and I was brought up around entrepreneurs, both of my parents own businesses, and they're just as pig-headed as I am, and we can definitely use work as a coping mechanism. So I'm going against the grain, and definitely that's my biggest demise, but I'm like working super hard to work against it.
I love it. So recognizing your humanity, as we've called it, is clearly something that you've learnt is important. What else along the way have you learnt is a non-negotiable that you've got to put into your day?
Absolutely. I have a beautiful partner of 7 years, Jake, and we're high school sweethearts. He's watched me grow from day dot of starting my business up until now. He puts up with, I think, honestly, people that are partners that have entrepreneurs or business owners as partners, holy hell, they're a different breed. They put up with so much. Spending time with Jake, and I have a German Shepherd and a cat. I'm 20. That's our family. Making sure I spend time with them every day, regardless if it's just eating dinner together, and just talking together. That's definitely my priority, and that's been a huge learning curve for me this year, that, you know, those people might not be around forever, and they're your support system, and you need to give them as much effort and love as they give you, because one day you might turn around and they might not be there. So definitely that has been a huge one this year, but all throughout my business journey, I've been journaling from day dot and manifesting and dreaming up new ideas and affirming and believing myself through journaling. So it might sound cheesy, but holy hell, it works. And looking back at some of my journals from 3 years ago, I'm like, wow, I'm here. Like, I have arrived. The stuff I was writing about 3 years ago, I'm doing currently. So
Isn't that
that's
awesome?
Yeah, it's been huge for me. What else? And just taking time to check in. Yep, that's a huge one too.
Absolutely. And that was something I recorded another episode just this morning, actually. And that was something we were talking about as well. Just taking the time. There is no magic silver bullet. There is no magic answer to business. It is simple and it's hard at the same time. I heard the terminology once, simplex. It's kind of simply complex. In as much as it can be as simple as, exactly like you've said, create that vision, like we've talked about before. Create that light at the end of the tunnel. Know what we're heading for. Believe it. Start acting as if we're there already. Do what that person there would do. Think what that person there would think. Make decisions how that person there would make decisions. And before you know it, we get there. So it is simple in theory, but that's a really hard mindset to get into, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And running a business, you're putting yourself out to the public to be judged. So having imposter syndrome and having moments of just not backing yourself is totally normal. And it can really mess with your mental health if you're not staying on top of it, and sort of supporting yourself through that and talking to other like-minded people and relating to them on that level. I've come to know a lot of other business owners and made them my amazing friends now, just because it's so relieving and so nice to relate to other people on that level and be like, oh, well, I'm not alone, as much as I can sometimes feel isolated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's another common theme that's really coming through. It's certainly something that I hold very important and very dear, but it's also coming through these conversations loud and clear. Having a supportive group of people around us, and not only our partner or our families and our friends, but having like-minded people in business that we can go to and realize, well, all that shit I'm going through, all that stuff of how I manage my time physically in the shop, then I've got to go home and do all the book work, then I've got to go and do the ordering, then I've got to go and do all the prep and the baking and like all of that other stuff. Because when you just got a job, you, like before, you said, you go in, you do your day at Sombreros, your day at the bar, your night at the bar, and you go home. But when you've got a business, there's so much more that has to go on once the doors are shut, isn't there?
Absolutely. And really, like, as much as you do have a team, you are responsible for everything, really. Someone might call in sick, that's your job to step up. And as much as I am working and am in the process, of stepping back from my business to hopefully move on to a new venture. It's hard, like you're always on the front line.
Absolutely. And I guess that's what comes from being sole proprietor, the one doing everything, to being leader of a team, isn't it? And I know that's something that we've certainly spoken about a lot over the last sort of 15 months or so. Is how do you transfer all that's in our heads, that all that experience, all those skills, all that vision, everything that's important to you, how do you translate that to your team? What advice would you give someone who is at that point where they're wanting to start to step away? What have you learnt over the last 12 months in yourself to enable you to sort of relinquish some of that control and go, what? I know it's all right in their hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you could probably remember I would just the first 6 months of opening the shop, I would just freak it whenever I had to leave the shop and not be there because I just had such like control issues over it. I think my biggest advice is be picky when you're picking your team, like don't be afraid to maybe work a couple extra hours if you haven't found the right person instead of just picking up some random off the street and chucking them in your business, and really making sure that their values on a personal level, I think, align with yours especially if it's a really small business that's super ethics and values based like Lucid is. You just simply can't skimp out on your employees' values as well. Yeah, because then that translates in their everyday work. Absolutely, it does. Absolutely. Yeah, so finding an amazing team, which I absolutely have at the moment, is it's crucial to being able to step back and do the behind the scenes stuff that actually keeps the business on turning. And I think I had a huge realization maybe 10 months ago that I actually get more done when I'm behind the scenes and I can push my business further when I'm not behind a coffee machine, as much as I love doing it. And I do still do it a good 30 to 40 hours a week. I still need that extra 10 hours during my week to focus on what Lucid looks like, because it's constantly evolving. Even if it is just a cafe, it is constantly evolving with how I grow as a person.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of people that will get a lot of value out of what you've just said. And this is something that, again, I've sort of noticed so much in you over the last 15 months or so. And I've noticed a huge amount of growth, but there's so much that you take for granted that it's just common sense. It's just what you do. Yet to someone else listening in, it's like, oh my God, I never thought of it like that.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I think I can't remember who it was. Someone will probably correct me. Like Kerwin Ray or Gary Vee or someone might have been Bill Gates. I don't know. Someone up there said the key is to hire slowly and fire fast. Yeah. And I think that's essentially what you've just said, isn't it? Take your time to get the right people, not just someone who's going to fill a vacancy.
Absolutely.
But if you find in however much time, if you find that person is actually not the person you thought they were, get them out quick. And take the time to find that right person again, because tolerating something just festers, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not worth it. And like my amazing mum, she's like this Maltese cutthroat real estate agent. She's amazing. I had that exact issue where an employee wasn't working out how I intended, and it was just the person was no longer aligning with what Lucid was about. And she just immediately, I was talking to her about it on the phone. She's like, well, when are you going to fire them? And I was like, what? I'm not ready to do that. She's like, no, you've got to do it. I'm like, oh my God. Holy hell, woman. Yeah. And that's sometimes the reality of business. And I think that's probably running a team has been like the most shocking thing for me is, you can have like a beautiful business that's aligned with values, but you're still going to face the everyday shit that all the other business owners face and deal with. And sometimes you do need to drop into that, okay, I'm doing this, or being a bit more cutthroat. And especially being a woman in business, I definitely found and being young, I don't get taken seriously a lot of the time until I put on a cranky face, and then they don't want to mess with me. So it's like you said, it's the evolution of business, and you're constantly shape shifting into many different forms.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What is it then through those ups and downs,
Mm.
through those awesome times, through those really uncomfortable times, through the challenging times? What is it that keeps you going? What is it that keeps you unlocking that door every morning?
Well, when I first started Lucid, like when I just had the Kombi and I didn't have a team yet, it was definitely just that vision for something better for the community, and to find connection.
Mm.
I honestly, I've always struggled with finding connection with other people and finding others that are like-minded to me, because I guess I'm a bit on the alternative side. um, and yeah, growing up as a kid, didn't have that many friends and that sort of deal. So I think once I got out of high school, I'm like, right, I'm finding my people and I'm giving other people, a platform to find their community and to to seek out a resource that they're able to lean on other people as well and not
Mm.
feel alone.
Mm.
But now, like, I obviously still absolutely back that value of developing and keeping a community thriving, but also watching my team thrive is just so beautiful. And just something that I guess blindsided me was watching your own team grow and, being able to give them a paycheck every week and give them a place where they love to work. It's just so
Mm.
beautiful.
Yeah. And give yourself permission to take credit for that and what you've
Thank
created,
you.
because
Thank you.
it is unreal, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I know that sort of bringing that next generation through is something that you're deeply passionate about, isn't it? So what advice would you give? You have grown a hell of a lot since you were that person at school, deciding that actually no, law isn't what I want to be doing. If you could go back and talk to yourself back then, what advice would you give yourself? Because there could be other kids in school right now
Mm-hmm.
thinking that they've got to go down the traditional route of finishing school and uni and a degree and a career, but in their heart of hearts, they know that's not what they want to do, but they're just so scared and have no idea that there's an
Mm.
alternative. What can you tell that person that might just give them a little bit of, wow, there is another way?
I think for starters, lean into your difference and lean into your uniqueness, because after school, that's going to be what separates you from the pack. Um, yeah, so that's on a personal level, absolutely lean into that difference and embrace it, because eventually you'll find your people. And then secondly, when it comes to possibly taking an alternative path, just because everyone else is off to uni or, going on a similar path to each other doesn't mean it's the one for you. And that's okay. And being absolutely all right with that, and knowing that the world is your oyster. You're going to have to put in the hard yards to get there. But it's so absolutely truly worth it. And I actually sometimes think about, what if I didn't come to that realization when I was 17? I would be a pretty miserable person.
Mm.
And I really do have a passion for guiding the next generation that's coming through to understanding that there is alternative paths out there, and that, uni and possibly a 9 to 5 or an office job is not for everyone, and that's totally okay.
Yeah.
And that entrepreneurship, or I don't care what you want to be, an athlete or a singer or whatever, it's totally a possibility. And you've just got to have enough guts and passion.
I love it is that, isn't it? It's courage, it's passion, but again, it's that support, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
having those people around us that aren't putting the pressure on, that aren't saying, no, you can't do that, don't be so stupid, you can't go buy a
Mm,
Kombi van and turn it into a coffee van, you've got to go to
mm.
uni.
Yeah,
And
and on that note, like, just prove them wrong. It's so satisfying. I think I've got a little bit of aggression back there, and I can remember telling one of my classmates' mums, she saw me after I'd graduated. She's like, oh, so what are you doing? I was like, oh, I've just actually got a rusted out a Kombi that's been sitting in a paddock for 20 years. And I'm turning it into a coffee van. And she just laughed in my face. Like she full on laughed in my face. And from that day, I'm like, I'm going to prove her wrong. I'm going to prove her wrong. I don't care if it's the last thing I do. I'm going to prove this woman wrong. So yeah, make it your fuel to the fire as well. Yeah.
Oh, that is such awesome advice, and I'm only laughing so hard because I totally resonate. I think if my parents listening to this episode, they might remember this story a little different, but this is how I remember it anyway. We were on holidays, and we did a lot of walking holidays as kids, and I remember, we walk through these paddocks or these fields, and then we go, have a pub dinner. And, we were walking through these fields one day, and there were all these cute little lambs and little sheep. And I'm like, oh, that's so lovely. Went and had dinner, yada, yada. Next day, similar sort of thing. And there were no lambs anymore. And there was just all the sheep were just, bleating and making this horrible noise. Like, what's going on? Like, what? Where are all the lambs? And, mum or dad were like, where do you think they are? What were they born for? And I was just like, oh, my God. I'm like, those lambs have been taken away from their mums, and their mums are so upset, and this is just so horrible. I was like, that's it, I'm never eating meat again. And I think, again, I don't remember mum, dad, maybe my brother, someone said there's no way you could not eat meat, and I was like, right. I'll show you.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I was like, that's it, I'm never eating meat again. And for dinner that night in the pub, like vegetarian meal, and I was like, and that's it. There's another story that ended my vegetarianism, but I was vegetarian for a lot of years. And it wasn't until I was an adult that changed, but that's a whole other story. But
that's hilarious.
That pig-headed determination, I love that. Like, use that as your fuel. Don't use it as your excuse to stop. Use it as your fuel to prove them wrong.
Yeah, that's it. Totally.
This is a conversation, again, I say this at the end of so many of these conversations, this is a conversation that could just keep going. There is so much, isn't there? I think we've kind of touched on it, but let's just summarize it again. If in the sort of 5 years that you've been in business, what would you say is the single biggest thing that you've learnt about yourself in that time?
Well, I think when you don't think you have anything left in the tank, fuel-wise, you've always just got that little bit more, and you've always just got that little bit more to push to get to that next destination or get to that next goal. And that, I think I'm a lot stronger and more determined than I initially thought. Because, business is a 24-hour job, and it's day in, day out, regardless if you're sick, regardless if your mental health's not good, regardless, it keeps on turning. And you've got to battle life and grow and go through things that everyone else goes through, whilst also maintaining a business. So I think I'm a lot stronger and determined than I actually thought I was.
And again, that point you just made there, that was something that came up in the conversation this morning as well. And that when, in your case, like you could if you really wanted to, I guess, but you can't just not open. Like, there's people who rely on you, and it's not just you. You are responsible for the wages of your team as well. So you have to, whatever's going on in your life, I guess there has to be an element of compartmentalization for a time at least. So you can, you do what you do, but then it's afterwards, once the doors are closed, then it's okay, now I deal with the human, now I deal with this, and then I'm ready for the next day.
Yeah. And I think I would have told you when I first started opening the shop that it was just beautiful in a way that I just had to show up for myself like I'd never had before, and show up for other people like I never had before, which, it takes a lot of mental energy, and it takes that push that I was talking about, that little last bit of fuel in your tank to get those doors open and keep going. I can remember once I was up all night till 3 a.m. with a really bad infected tooth.
Oh, no.
And I was just in such a state. Had the old frozen peas against the face, and I knew I had to be at the shop at 7.
Oh,
So I
my
got like
God.
2 hours sleep, but I got up anyway and opened the shop. And yeah, that was just one of those times that I was like, wow, that was really hard.
I bet you were longing for the end of that day.
Yeah, but you do it. And I think my biggest thing I've always told myself and other entrepreneurs or people that want to start businesses but are hesitant because of societal values or other pressures is that just fake it till you make it. I know it sounds dumb, but throw yourself in there and just effing try. Because I think most of the time you're going to surprise yourself.
Totally. And I think that relates back to what we spoke about before, isn't
Yeah.
it? Have that vision of what you're aiming for and act as if you're already there.
Totally.
So in a way, like you're not faking it, you're preempting what the future success for you looks like, and you're just doing it now.
Absolutely.
And before you know it, you realize you've evolved into that person. It's like, how did that happen?
Yeah, totally.
And then that's a constant evolution, isn't it? It's like, okay, well, great, I'm there now. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing?
Yeah, it's so exciting. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's what keeps them going is, constantly creating and evolving into something new and more progressive and more forward. It's just like, that's the thing that keeps me totally like turning up every day. And new ideas, I'm so nerdy for new business ideas.
Oh my gosh, I'm the same. I'm very I'm very grateful, though in the moment I don't see it as grateful for the sort of the steady influence of my husband, because I'm like, oh, I could do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and he's like, whoa.
Take it down a notch.
He's like, you only just started that, how about you just do that for a bit? Oh, you're such a killjoy. But then I'm like, yeah, that's right.
No, I can't run 5 businesses at the same time, not just yet. Oh, that's hilarious.
It's funny. So for anybody local who doesn't know where you are physically, where are you? And then online, where can people find you?
Totally. All right, so you can find the Kombi Monday to Friday on Baruma Street out at Estella, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Either me or one of my amazing employees will be out there serving the good stuff. And then you can find my beautiful little shop, Lucid Coffee Bar on 11 Gerwood Street. And we're open 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. 7 days a week.
Fabulous. And that's in Wagga Wagga?
Yeah, it's in Wagga Wagga.
Yep.
Totally.
Excellent.
And on socials, you can find us at Lucid Kombi Cafe, Kombi with a K, and Lucid Coffee Bar.
Fabulous. And we'll put the I say we, it just comes out as we. It sounds like there's a team, but there isn't. It's just me. I will put the link, all your social links in the show notes of this episode. So anyone that wants to follow you've got this amazing style to your, especially your Instagram feed. It just looks so beautiful, and it's the same feel you get when you walk into the cafe. So it's a beautiful feed to follow anyway, whether you're local or not. But I think sharing your business insights as well is just pure gold. So thank you so much. But I'm not going to let you go just yet.
I'm ready.
We're going to do some quick fire questions.
Okay, let's go.
Let's do this. All right. What are you reading right now?
I'm reading a really cool book called Talking About Kevin.
Okay. What's that about? That's totally not quick fire. I just can't do quick fire. I'm like, oh, let's have another conversation.
I love crime books. So it's actually written in the mother's perspective of talking about her child who has committed a few murders.
Wow.
It's juicy as hell. And sort of how she deals with that. Yeah.
That sounds very cool.
It's intense.
What about just changing the vibe up a notch? Your song, a favorite song best song of all time.
Oh God, that's so hard, dude. I'm gonna go Gypsy by Fleetwood Mac. And I'm not gonna sing that for you.
What is it about that song? What does that mean to you?
It's just about like a traveling hippie that's on the road, living her best life. And of course, Stevie Nicks is singing it, so it just makes it 100 times better.
Excellent. I love it. What about a quote that's changed your life?
I don't know if I have one for that. I just preach to myself all the time. I like affirmations. I use affirmations all the time. And my affirmation that I tell myself is I am worthy.
That's very, very cool. Very valuable.
And I tell my team that all the time.
All right, now we're switching it up a notch. Practical head. What about a piece of tech or an app or a bit of software that's changed how you do business?
Our business could not live without Skip. It's an online ordering system. We probably do 50 to 60 orders on Skip a day. That's like each business, and it has totally just pumped up our production. Yeah, it's unreal.
Wow. So that's people can order on their phones or whatever, and then just drop in and pick it up.
They just order on the app, like all your bank details are already put in, and then 5 minutes, bam, barista's made your coffee, ready to go.
So good.
Life-changing.
And what about a life hack? Leave us with a life hack. You've left us with so much, but one more little thing that's going to change someone's life.
This is going to sound so vanilla, but and you taught me this, really, just scheduling your day is just so good, because you're then giving yourself permission to do whatever you've set yourself for that day. And like, I'm talking self-care shit as well, like roster in your self-care, roster in your work, roster in spending time with your dog. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen. And that way, your life feels less overwhelming, especially as a business owner.
Oh, that's so good. It is so true, isn't it? Because we could do stuff 24/7. There's always stuff, particularly with that go-getter, like want to get stuff done head. It's like we could just keep going. So to sort of have that, no, I'm stopping at 4:00 and I'm going and taking the dog for a walk. And then I'm going to go and sit and have a drink with my partner or whatever. It does seem, like you say, a bit random to schedule it in, but sometimes we've got to. And if it works, rock on.
I literally have like a turn off, like a scheduled turn off. Because I just found that I just was not turning off, and that's what leads to burnout.
Oh yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. It has been such fun. I've been really excited and looking forward to this one. So yay, we did it.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And that's a wrap for episode number 11. What an inspirational conversation. What were your top takeaways? There were some big, important concepts that we chatted about in this episode, so here's what I see as worthy of a recap. Firstly, values. Values is something I talk to all my clients about because it's really important to not only know, but be able to articulate what's important to us. When we have that very clear vision of what we value, like Em does, it really helps us drive our business forward and make decisions that keep us in alignment and keep us loving what we're doing. For me, for example, some of my top values are curiosity and fun, which is why doing this podcast is so important to me. It keeps things interesting, it allows me to be curious, and it lets me have a good time with my guests. If I made a decision that meant me having to work for hours on my own, doing the same thing day in, day out for hours and hours and hours over and over and over, I'd soon start to feel pretty flat and unmotivated, and I'd struggle to maintain it long term. So working in alignment with our values is crucial for feeling that sustained energy and satisfaction about what we do. Secondly, for me, I love what Em has to say about learning to feel her emotions. Sometimes it can feel far, far too easy to push uncomfortable feelings aside and carry on carrying on, especially if we have got a lot to do. But this is so counterproductive. Think of emotions like a pressure cooker. Sure, like we can suppress them to a point, but they will always come back, and they will often come back stronger, bigger and badder than they did before. So as counterproductive as it might feel, if we can feel a block around something, perhaps it's asking for money or having a difficult conversation, then we need to use that as our cue to stop and feel into that emotion. Let it flow and process it before we move on, or it's just going to keep on rearing its head again and again and again. So I love that journey that Em has been on in really sort of unpacking the emotion behind the decisions and the things going on in her business. It's awesome. Finally, a notable mention goes to something that Em said right at the end, in as much as we're all on different paths. And if this sounds familiar, like it's coming up a lot in episode after episode, that's because it is. And it's because it's so bloody important. Just because we might feel there's a social idea of normal or success, if that doesn't feel right for us, then we are 100% responsible and able to pick another path. No decision has to be final, and we always have the power to choose a different path, and we always need to remember that what's right for one person isn't necessarily what's right for us, and vice versa, and we've got to learn to be okay with that. Okay. Remember, if this episode has brought up anything for you that you're curious to bounce or chat about, then book in for one of my business bouncing calls. They are completely complimentary. All they will cost you is half an hour of your time, so you can jump on to reignitepc.com.au and click the book a chat button to save your spot for one of those, or you can click the link in the show notes to this episode. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this show on the podcast app that you are listening to it on right now, because that really does help support me and support the show. Share this episode with someone you feel needs to hear it. And if you are listening on Apple, please, I would be super grateful if you could leave me a review, because again, that really helps build awareness and momentum around this show. Alrighty, I will be back in your ears very soon, and until next time, bye-bye.